Erik Halterman of RotoWire here with 6 players to pick up this weekend, starting with Ben Rice of the Yankees. He is a prospect who was in a difficult but not uncommon spot. Was his glove going to be good enough for him to be a big league catcher? And if not, is his bat good enough for him to be a major league first baseman? Not sure yet, but we're going to have the opportunity to find out with Anthony Rizzo on the 60-day IL with a broken arm. Ben Rice got the call and is playing a lot of first base. He got 2 starts in a row right after his call up, including one against the lefty. He did sit in the 3rd game, so we're not yet sure he's a true everyday player, but plenty of playing time for a player who hit 275 with a 925 OPS, 15 homers in 60 games in the minors this season. And importantly, Rice should qualify at catcher in most leagues because that's the position he played in the minors. He'll be considerably less interesting where he doesn't, but still potentially worth a look. But certainly anywhere where you need a catcher, consider Ben Rice. You could also consider Hunter Goodman of the Rockies, who got the call earlier this season, also a catching prospect whose defense might leave him as not a catcher in the majors. And when Goodman got called up earlier this season, he mostly played outfield and mostly struggled, but over the last week, he's gotten the opportunity to get some starts at catcher in the absence of Jacob Stallings, and his bat has started to heat up. 3 home runs in the last week, and also 3 starts at catcher, which means he's up to 5 appearances there on the season. That should be enough to qualify in many leagues, and it leaves him maybe just 5 more starts away from qualifying in many others. Goodman's shown real power in the majors this year, 5 homers in 90 trips to the plate. That's an easy 30 homer pace if he played the full season. He's only hitting 188 with a 29% strikeout rate, but Coors Field should help that batting average if Goodman can get regular playing time, and the power should be real. He has a 13.6% barrel rate and had good power grades as a prospect. Finally, on the hitting side, Zack Gelof of the Athletic showed some promise last year, which earned him widespread fantasy interest, but then he struggled to open this season, which meant he was dropped in a lot of shallower fantasy leagues. 597 OPS in April, 402 OPS in May. Gelof has an 885 OPS in June, so I'd be picking him up in those shallow leagues, even though his season-long numbers are still quite poor, and his 35% strikeout rate on the season is a real worry, but he was at 27% last season, and so if he can just get into the high 20s this year, there should be enough power and speed for the whole profile to work. 8 homers and 8 steals on the year this season, even while he struggled for most of the year. If you combine his good numbers last year in a partial season with his bad numbers in a partial season this year, we get 22 homers, 22 steals, and a 238 average across 125 games. 20-20 player, maybe a 25-25 kind of player, that's going to be good enough in a lot of leagues, even with a low batting average. Moving to the mound, we've got DJ Herz, a left-handed starter for the Nationals, getting a ton of attention this week after his 13 strikeout game against the Marlins. Now, Hertz didn't do much in his first 2 major league starts, but hey, when you strike out 13 batters, even if they're Marlins, you deserve some attention. Hertz was just a fringe prospect, really, an 8th round pick by the Cubs in 2019, traded to Washington in the Jeimer Candelario deal last year. Career 3.65 ERA for Hertz in the minors with a 128 whip, which is a bit high because he's got a 15% walk rate. That gives him real relief risk with those control problems and might mean that his 34% strikeout rate in the minors doesn't really get to shine against the best hitters in the league. Really, you want to take a shot at the strikeout upside here because there's just so little competition for starts in Washington. If Hertz looks at all interesting, he'll probably stick around and get you some whiffs, even if he blows up your ratios every now and then. Spencer Schwellenbach of Atlanta, another interesting pitcher to take a shot on this week. He debuted in late May and looked pretty bad in his first 2 starts at an 8.38 ERA, 155 whip over those 2 outings, but then a quality start at Baltimore in his 3rd career major league outing, only 3 strikeouts in that one, to be fair. In his 4th start, when he struck out 7, allowed just 1 earned run, 3 hits in 6 innings against the Tigers. That's enough to get me excited with 2 good starts in a row happening right as Hurston Waldrop, Schwellenbach's competition for that final spot in the Atlanta rotation. Well, Waldrop struggled even worse than Schwellenbach and is now on the IL, so there should be some time for Schwellenbach to make the job his own. He's an interesting prospect. He was just outside the top 100 here at RotoWire. He's just inside the top 100 some other places. May have been called up too early. Only 2 AA starts and none at AAA for Schwellenbach, so he's really an unknown quantity, but after seeing a couple good outings and after seeing the competition thin out, I'm a little bit more interested than I was a month ago. And finally, Chad Green is an interesting option for saves. The Blue Jays are without Jordan Romano, who's out with elbow inflammation, has dealt with elbow issues all season. Also, Jimmy Garcia now out with right right elbow ulnar neuritis. So Jad Green has been officially anointed the next man up by his manager. He's somebody who has some experience in the ninth inning, 13 career saves. He's pitching quite well this season, 1.72 ERA and an 0.89 whip. To be fair, his strikeout stuff isn't quite what it was during his best seasons, just 23% strikeout rate this year. He had 5 straight seasons with a strikeout rate north of 30%, peaked north of 40% back in 2017. Green was one of the best middle relievers in baseball back in that era, and somebody who had the workload, which made him an interesting fantasy option even if he wasn't getting saves. I don't know if he's still that guy now, but he may not be too far from it, and he's getting saves, so he's probably worth it on teams that are desperate. For more names, check out the Saturday edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast with me and Ryan Boyer.